Ladies and gentlemen, so for the past several months, Donald Trump has been under a gag order preventing him from speaking out about the hush money case, which resulted in an outcome where he is now labeled as a felon. Now, of course, Donald Trump tested the limits of this unconstitutional gag order on True Social and was fined thousands of dollars and was threatened to be locked up by the person presiding over the trial. And this is, of course, Judge Merchan. Now, some of the things that this gag order prevented Donald Trump from speaking about were the obvious injustices and concerns that any defendant who is running for political office would have if they stood trial, knowing that the odds were stacked against them. And not just small things. These things are things that you would expect to see happening in places like communist China. Stuff like the judge donating to a political opponent, and the judge's family, who raises millions of dollars off of this trial. And also one of the prosecutors coming directly from the office of your political opponent. Matthew Colangelo, look him up. But now that the trial is over and all that is left is the sentencing, Donald Trump's lawyers are requesting that the gag order be lifted. But Alvin Bragg, who is not satisfied with his rigged victory against Donald Trump, is opposing this motion because he claims Donald Trump is harming the integrity of the proceedings. So here is a letter from Donald Trump's lawyers to Judge Merchan, and I don't have high hopes for Judge Merchan to lift this gag order, but this is what it says. We respectfully submit this pre-motion letter requesting that Your Honor terminate the gag order restricting President Trump's extrajudicial statements for the reasons set forth below, because the trial has concluded, the stated basis for the gag order no longer exists. Unless the court grants the requested relief based on this letter and any response from the government, we further request an opportunity to submit the briefing on this issue. The proffered justifications for the gag order, which we disagree with, related to the trial. The government's February 22nd motion stated that the prosecution was seeking to, quote, protect the integrity of this criminal proceeding and avoid prejudice to the jury. In the March 26th order, the court reasoned that the eve of the trial is upon us. And on March 29th, the government filed a letter seeking expansion of the gag order based on concerns relating to, quote, trial participants, trial witnesses, and prospective jurors. And this ruling also was expanded out to include family members of the court, which just so happened to include Judge Merchan's daughter, Lauren Merchan, who runs Authentic Campaigns, who has raised almost $100 million off of this trial. Yes, so that was one of the many concerns that Donald Trump had that he couldn't personally speak out about because the judge would have put him in jail. But in the April 1st order, the court referred to concerns about a juror, a witness, and personnel participating in the trial in some other capacity. Now that the trial is concluded, the concerns articulated by the government and the court do not justify continued restrictions on the First Amendment rights of President Trump, who remains the leading candidate in the 2024 presidential election, and the American people. The constitutional mandate for unrestrained campaign advocacy by President Trump is even stronger in light of, number one, President Biden's May 28th campaign event outside the courthouse during the defense summation. So if you remember, Robert De Niro and Biden's administration, he was with the Biden administration, came out and held a press conference outside of the courthouse while the closing arguments were being made inside of the courtroom. And then number two, President Biden's public comments regarding the jury's verdict on May the 31st. And number three, continued public attacks against President Trump by government witnesses Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. Yeah, these two, they keep running their mouths about Donald Trump, but yet Donald Trump himself can't clap back. He's not able to defend himself personally. It's absolutely insane. And number four, the presidential debate scheduled for June the 27th of 2024. But this was respectfully submitted by Todd Blanche, Emile Beauvais of Blanche Law. But the problem is, Alvin Bragg, he does not want Donald Trump to be ungagged, of course, because Donald Trump may bring some light to the injustices that he received during this trial. Now, I don't believe that anyone is really hidden from the fact that Donald Trump received an immense amount of injustice during this trial. But Donald Trump has the biggest megaphone probably in the entire world, because when Donald Trump speaks out, people listen And Donald Trump wants to speak out about this, and he has a right to, because why? Because we live in the United States of America, and if he feels like he received injustice, he should be able to practice his First Amendment right, especially because the trial is over now. So what reason do Judge Merchan and Alvin Bragg have to keep the gag order in place? It's absolutely insane. But this is an article, and it says Alvin Bragg urges court to keep Trump gagged at least through sentencing. But New York County District Attorney Alvin Bragg urged Judge Merchan not to approve Trump's request to lift a limited gag order in his hush money case. But after being convicted of 34 felony counts last week, Trump's attorneys argued that the gag order was no longer necessary. It prevents Trump from discussing witnesses, jurors, court staff, and their families. Now that the court is concluded, the concerns articulated by the government in the court do not justify continued restrictions on the First Amendment rights of President Trump. This is from the letter that we read earlier. However, in response on Wednesday, Bragg's team explained why the limited gag order should remain in place. And let's go to that actual letter from Alvin Bragg's office. And this is the actual letter from Alvin L. Bragg Jr. to Judge Merchan. And he says, "Dear Justice Merchan, pursuant to the court's March 8th order on the filing of future motions, the people respectfully submit this response to defendant's June 3rd request to terminate the court's March 26th and April 1st orders." So these are the two gag orders that were slapped on Trump. But these orders restricting defendants' extrajudicial statements. The people oppose any immediate termination of the orders and agree with defendants' proposal for further briefing. We request that the court adopt the same briefing schedule that the court set for all other post-trial motions, with defendant's motion due on June 13th and people's response due by June 27th. So this is the justification that they use for wanting this gag order to stay in place against Donald Trump. Once again, the individual running for president, the leading presidential nominee for 2024. And this is their justification. They say, defendant's letter asserts that the stated basis for the court's orders no longer exist, quote, because the trial has concluded. The court's orders, however, were based not only on the need to avoid threats to the fairness of the trial itself, but also on the court's broader obligation to prevent actual harm to the integrity of the proceedings. Now, you let me know. Do you believe that they have any integrity in these proceedings? That integrity is already gone, I'm sorry. And it's not because of Donald Trump. It is because of you, Alvin Bragg. It is because of you, Judge Merchan. It is because of you, Joe Biden, and these people that brought this rigged trial against Donald Trump. And if you followed this trial closely, you know why. And it's not just because the judge's daughter runs a campaign, runs a organization that raises money for the Democrats. It's not just because Matthew Colangelo is the ex-associate attorney general for Joe Biden or worked on the Obama administration, but it is also because of the actions of the judge himself during this trial, overruling the objections from the defense, 99-1, and sustaining the objections from the prosecution, 99-1. This is how a judge is able to really curate the outcome of this trial and tip the scales in the favor of the prosecution. But Alvin Bragg continues, not only is it to prevent actual harm to the integrity of the proceedings, but to protect the orderly administration of this court and to avoid risks to the administration of justice. And he says this is tailored restrictions warranted to protect against defendants' efforts to threaten the, quote, integrity of the judicial proceedings and, quote, interfere with the fair administration of justice and, quote, intimidate this court. As the people will explain more fully in our written opposition to defendants' forthcoming motions, these interests have not abated, and the court has an obligation to protect the integrity of these proceedings and the fair administration of justice, at least through the sentencing hearing and the resolution of any post-trial motions. The people's opposition will address whether, if at all, would be appropriate to tailor aspects of the court's orders given the conclusion of the trial. So Alvin Bragg here is trying to argue that Donald Trump is a risk to the integrity of the court proceedings. And you know what? What about the people who got an unfair trial? This is why we have freedom of speech. What if Donald Trump got an unfair trial? He should have the right to speak out against that. I firmly believe that he got an unfair trial. There are millions of Americans that believe that he got an unfair trial. And if he did, he should be able to speak out. There are people who believe that he got a completely fair trial, and that's fine. They can believe that, they can think that. But this is why we have the freedom of speech in America, because fair trials don't happen 100% of the time. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're Republican. There are unfair trials that happen all the time. And in this case, I believe it was politically motivated. I think it was completely unfair. And I believe that gagging Donald Trump is a crime. It is a complete crime by Alvin Bragg and Judge Merchan. I 100% believe that to the core of my being. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think about Donald Trump being gagged and being continued to be gagged even after the trial? I mean, the sentencing hasn't happened yet, but the trial itself is over. Donald Trump is he's officially a convicted felon, and I will happily vote for this convicted felon with joy. But let me know what you think down below in the comments. Like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. But until then, I will see you on the next one.